Welcome back, focused learners. Today we're diving into an explainer that is, honestly, going to completely transform how you look at a horoscopic chart. If you've ever glanced at astrology and felt just totally overwhelmed by the sheer number of rules, the exceptions, the endless combinations, well, you are definitely not alone. But don't worry, because today we are going to decode this massive, overwhelming world of astrological combinations into a really simple, highly logical cosmic recipe. So, to kick things off, we've got to ask a super fundamental question. What does the word yoga actually mean when we're talking about the stars? And let's just clarify this right away. We are not talking about physical stretching or downward dogs or holding a plank pose here. Okay, let's dive right into this. The term yoga in classical astrology literally translates to join or union. When we look at the classical texts, it's referring to a specific planetary disposition that is capable of yielding very specific results. Think of your horoscope as a kitchen. And the planets? Well, they're your ingredients. A yoga is simply what happens when certain ingredients join together to create a specific dish. Now, here is our blueprint for today's explainer. Number 1, defining astrological yogas. 2, the cosmic ingredients. 3, how planets link together. 4, modifiers and timing. And finally, 5, famous yogas in action. Section 1, defining astrological yogas. The grammar of the stars. To really grasp how planetary combinations form yogas, you kind of need to know how to construct a cosmic sentence. Think of it like this. The planets act like your nouns, the signs they sit in are your adjectives, and the houses they occupy are your verbs. When we explore the classical texts, these cosmic sentences, or linkages, form in 4 foundational ways. First, you can have a yoga involving planets only, just pure ingredients interacting with each other. Second, a linkage between planets and houses. Third, between planets and the signs of the zodiac. And finally, the most complex recipes involve a combination of all 3, planets, houses, and signs, all working together in a really specific alignment. Section 2, the cosmic ingredients, understanding the planets. Now, what's really interesting here is that you can't bake a cake without knowing the difference between sugar and salt, right? In astrology, the inherent nature of the planets acts just like those distinct flavors you'd add to a recipe. Notice how fundamentally different these planetary flavors are, and how they instantly change the outcome of a yoga. Take the Sun and Mars, you're dealing with a royal, aggressive heat. Mars is going to instill an element of dominance and aggressiveness into any planetary combination it touches. But then look at Jupiter and Venus. These are your benefics. Jupiter brings philosophical wisdom, virtue, and grace. If you mix the intense heat of Mars into a combination versus the graceful wisdom of Jupiter, the entire flavor of that yoga shifts completely. And then, of course, we have Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. They're often seen as malefic, detached, and unorthodox. They represent the bitter or astringent flavors that can bring struggle, sure, but they also bring immense technical skill and deep spiritual detachment. Section 3, how planets link together, mixing the ingredients. All right, so we know our ingredients, but how do they actually interact to form these yogas? Well, there's a really clear progression of link intensity here. First up, we have a conjunction, which is simply planets occupying the exact same sign. They're basically sharing a room, sitting side by side, and heavily influencing each other's output. Second, we have a mutual aspect. This is when planets are in different houses entirely, but they transmit their influence across the chart by looking directly at each other. And third is parivartana, or an exchange. This is a super intense link where 2 planets literally swap houses. Planet A sits in planet B's house, and planet B sits in planet A's house. It's this fundamental structural tie that just totally binds their energies together. Section 4, modifiers and timing. The oven timer. To truly wrap our heads around how and when these combinations form, we first have to address the sheer scale of astrology. 1,800. That is the number of variations of just one specific category of combinations called the Nabhasa yogas alone. Literally just one category. Let that sink in for a second. The source texts make it incredibly clear that trying to just rote memorize thousands of combinations is a doomed approach. You'll drive yourself crazy. Instead, we have to learn the rules of the grammar. We have to understand the logic of how these ingredients blend rather than trying to memorize 1,000 completely separate recipes. So the crucial point here is understanding the difference between the static promise and the dynamic delivery. The horoscope and the yogas within it represent a static promise. It's the recipe written down on a piece of paper. But the dasha system, the planetary timing periods, represents the dynamic fructification. Think about it. You can have a brilliant, award-winning recipe for a cake, but if you don't turn the oven on, you don't get a cake. The dasha system is the oven timer. A yoga's promised results generally only come to pass when the specific dasha, or the time period of its constituent planets, actually operates in your life. Section 5, Famous Yogas in Action. Tasting the final dish. Okay, we've defined our grammar, we've mixed our ingredients, and we've set the timer. Now let's see how this builds in the real world by looking at the famous Gaja Kisari Yoga. Gaja means elephant, and Kisari means lion. This incredibly famous yoga is formed when the moon and Jupiter are placed in a mutual quadrangular or kendra relationship to each other. Remember our ingredients from earlier? Here we are combining the graceful, royal, mental faculties of the moon with the pure, philosophical, benefic wisdom of Jupiter. And this brilliantly illustrates the classical results you might read about. A person with this yoga activated is said to be overpowering, famous, highly intelligent, virtuous, wealthy, consistent in love, and a favorite of the king. But, and this is a big but, our source texts give a vital warning here. Strict adherence to the literal meanings of these ancient texts is just doomed to failure. We have to contextually adapt these phrases for today's world. Being a favorite of the king might actually translate to being highly favored by your CEO, or maybe receiving a massive government grant for your startup. The underlying truth, the actual flavor of the recipe, remains exactly the same. Which leaves us with this final thought. Your natal chart is entirely, beautifully unique. If your life is a cosmic recipe, what planetary ingredients are sitting there right now, just waiting for their perfect dasha timer to activate? Understanding this grammar, this language of how combinations actually form yogas, is the absolute key to unlocking the true potential of your own chart. You really don't need to memorize 1,000 combinations. You just need to understand the ingredients. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I will see you next time.